Here's my single point light source for my physical model drawing the Equinox, showing us how shadow angles work. And my physical model is down here, located 12 meters away from the single light source. So what we have here, we have 3 locations marked on the equator. We have 1 location marked 30 degrees north and 1 location marked 30 degrees south. So we're going to demonstrate sunrise at 090 degrees on the March equinox. So as the sun rotates in sunrise, the equator, these lines remain perfectly parallel or in a straight line, but as we look in the north, we see the shadow at 090, and as the sun rises, that's the shadow. So the sun itself are rising, and the sun for the daytime will arc around in a southerly direction. In the southern hemisphere, as we'll see it down here, same again. (090 degrees) sunrise. As the sun starts to rise, it'll opposite, and the sun will actually come up and do a slight arc to the north as it comes up. As we continue through on the equator, we'll see the shadows are all in a straight line. Perfect straight line. And if we check out solar noon on the equator, the shadow completely disappears. Solar noon. Now what I can't do, I can't rotate this model around 180 degrees or spin it because of this plastic piece right here. So what we're going to go and do, we're going to spin this model around 180 degrees to the September equinox, so we can do our 270 degrees sunset for the same locations. Just get that squared up there. Look around this side. Let's rotate the model a bit more. And now the same again here. So as we're coming in towards sunset on the equator, the shadows following a perfect straight line. Northern hemisphere 30 degrees north as it comes round towards sunset, 270 degrees. Better look through there. Setting 270 degrees. Setting 270 degrees at the equator. At 30 degrees south. Also coming up, setting 270 degrees as the sun sets. Now also on the same model, we can see the correct terminator line on the equinox, so it's even days, even nights. You can see through there, although this plastic's in the way here, kind of diffuses the light a little bit, but we can see that we're getting 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, correctly illuminated. Okay, this is not part of the requirement for the competition, but I thought I'd just run it through it anyway quickly. This is to do with the sun's path over the equator, and in the December solstice the sun goes down to the Tropic of Capricorn and for the June solstice up to the Tropic of Cancer. So what we're going to do, so effectively during the, rotate this around to the December solstice, at any location on the Tropic of Capricorn there, if it's focused, during solar noon, sun will be directly overhead solstice on the Tropic of Capricorn, while the equator, the sun is slightly heading south or slightly southerly direction and casting shadow slightly north. Now we'll move ahead 6 months and we'll go through to the June solstice, where the sun now will be overhead the Tropic of Cancer. As we can see, Tropic of Cancer, solar noon, the shadow is directly overhead Tropic of Cancer, and the equator, the sun is slightly north and casting a shadow slightly south. Okay, I think I forgot to address this last point in my previous video with shadow angles, using the same distant light source 12 meters on the same model. That's to do with the shadow angle at a different latitude, showing the shadow angles. In this case we'll be using the 45° north latitude. So what we have here is that this piece of dowel is 20 millimeters high, so it should be casting a 20 millimeter shadow through there, and that then should give us a 45° angle. So hopefully, without messing the model up, we'll get this measured. We have 20 millimeters for the shadow. And now the height. $20 high. So effectively that gives us that 45° angle through there. Okay, this next part of the video is to try and determine the size of continents on a globe relative to the real world. And the best way I can do this is probably use flights across Australia and the flights across the USA. So what we're going to do, we're going to use 2 flights using a similar distance. We have one flight leaving Perth to Sydney, which is a QF 576, aircraft type of Boeing 737-800 or 737-800. Distance in kilometres using the Great Circle Mapper is 3,285 kilometres, and the average time is about 3 hours 50 minutes for the flight time. The other flight is from San Francisco to Detroit Municipal Airport, Delta Airlines DL745, Boeing 737-900, and distance in kilometres is 3,346 kilometres. I hope this is in focus. Around about 61 kilometres further. Average time about 4 hours. Now these are just average times here, because even here in Australia, flying from Perth to Sydney can vary anywhere between 3.5 hours and over 4 hours, depending on standard instrument departures, standard instrument arrivals, vectoring, wind and weather. So all that can vary. So these are just rough estimates, but what we do know is that the distance is very similar, just a little bit further in in North America. So what I've done on the map, or on the globe I meant to say, I've marked off the string between Perth and across to Sydney, And I've done the same. If I can tip this up. San Francisco to Detroit. Got Detroit there through San Francisco. Now I'm going to go and take these off, and these bits between these two bits of string, between Perth, Sydney and San Francisco and Detroit, should be very similar, almost identical, maybe a little bit longer on this one, but we'll take them off and see. So I'll go and hook this camera back up out of the way. Move that. And we'll rotate that. Pull up Perth and Sydney. Put that over the top, put that in line with that one. One through there, and as we can see, almost identical, probably between San Francisco and Detroit a little bit further, but pretty much identical. So that actually confirms the distance across Australia and the distance in North America. On these flights, well, I've not taken this flight in North America, but I have taken this flight. I've lived in Perth 40 years. I've flown from Perth to Sydney several times. These flights do exist, and these are about the average times that they take. So that confirms the distance using a globe model. Now the last part of the challenge is to demonstrate how an equatorial mount works on a physical model. So that'll be the last test to do. I think I've addressed everything else in the challenge, so just got one last thing to do. Okay, here's my model of a physical model of how equatorial mounts work on a spinning globe. And yes, it is a globe. It's actually a cross section globe, so you imagine part bulge coming this side and the bulge going out the back side as well. It's just a cross section. And how this model works is it spins around. These equatorial mounts there will also rotate, counter-rotate to point in the same direction. It's all powered by a 12 volt DC main power supply, which in turn goes into a PWM speed controller, which has got the speed controller forward and reverse switches on there. Wires down through here to a 12 volt 5 RPM high torque DC motor, and that drives the whole model. Stand back a bit. Drives the whole model up and down its vertical axis of rotation. And the actual telescope mounts, we have one in the north and one mounted in the south. And like I say, these should be all polar aligned, or reasonable. I used a plumb bob coming down from the top of this frame, but a string coming down to line them all the way up through there. So these will actually rotate from this single point, rotate around this way. And of course, you can also change the direction where you're looking in the sky as it rotates around, or the other way around in the southern hemisphere. And these are controlled by a 12 volt power supply, This is the on-off switch for a PWM speed controller. They both have a speed controller for each mount. And the actual scopes themselves, get this back into view again. We have 2 AAA batteries, and they are wired in series to give me 3 volts. Because in here we have a laser diode and back a on-off toggle switch for the laser diode, so we can actually turn this on. Laser diode on. Turn the laser off, just to assist in targeting. And like I say, getting these, so how you align telescope mounts or equatorial mounts is that these lines here are all vertical to the axis of rotation. So as we mount it, this here is the equator coming through here. So to mount a scope there, that would be 0 degrees. As we go further north or south, the angle increases. This angle through here starts to increase all the way up to 30, 40, and this line here, that's actually 45 degrees. So you come up through there, that's 45 degrees, you'd mount your scope, that's where you were, kick all the way up to you finally hit 90 degrees. And that's how you might mount the scope. You have to excuse the poor cable management and the excess gaffer tape. Had to do a few changes as I built the model. So anyway, how it all works together, we'll get these up and running. And this is a master, just a master on-off switch, so I can turn both scopes on-off simultaneously. So we'll turn them on now, and they'll start rotating in sync from the top and the bottom one. So they're rotating around in sync. And of course, you can change the scope direction where you want to be looking in the sky, but that's not motorized, that's just manual. And how we're going to rotate the model is that we'll go and turn the model on. So effectively that's still tracking, looking at the object in the same direction, or roughly in the same direction. Now, what I'm finding is that there's these 12 volt 5 RPM motors for the mounts. They both have got 2 motors that are exactly the same. And this is a 12 volt 5 RPM motor, is that there's a slight variation between all 3 motors in their speed. Even with using the PWM speed controller, there's just too much variation, and I can't get it fine-tuned. So there's going to be a variation between this mount and the bottom mount and the whole rotation of the Earth. But we'll try and get as close as we can, as long as we can at least get, say, half a rotation, which is about 12 hours, or quarter rotation. If we can get a full rotation looking at the same objects in the sky, and that'll be good. But we're going to see how we go with it. So we'll take it out tonight, fire it up, and see how we go. That's a quarter of a rotation, both together. And that's half a rotation, 12 hours, and they're both looking at the same object, or thereabouts anyway. Yep, I know it's not perfect, but yeah, having better motors would have certainly helped, and having them in sync. But that's never going to be the case. But still, it demonstrates how equatorial mounts, just spinning on one axis of rotation, can actually track an object to the sky. And that's some 1.5 rotations now. It's still on the fence. Coming up to now second rotation, 2 days, and it's still looking in the same general direction. So, yep, I think it's worked reasonably well. Okay, the top one's now drifting back the other way, I think. Before it's going to be too fast, now it's going a little bit too slow. Yeah, just can't get it right. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm just going to do one last quick test, long range this time. What I have done though, I've modified the model a little bit. I've taken off the old top mount and taken the bottom mount that we had here that was tracking a little better with the motor, and I've placed it back up here, and we've beefed the laser up a little bit, giving it a little bit more juice. I've put two 3-volt batteries in series, giving it 6 volts. So 6 volts to a 3-volt laser diode. So it's going to get a little warm and probably end up melting it, but it doesn't really matter. And we're going to be pointing it at a building in the distance up there, right in the top corner somewhere. Now the distance to that building is 98 meters from here to the building, and it's about 25, maybe 30 meters up in the air. So we're looking at least about 100 meters. And hopefully we'll get it tracking spot on. Starting the simulation right now. And there we have, that's a full rotation. We just lost sight of it at the back of the earth there. Back in the view again, back on target. It's over a full rotation, 100 meters away. And again. That's tracking quite well. Oh, I'm happy with that. Okay, just for a bit of fun, I thought we'll try the equatorial mounts on a single plane of rotation, or single axis of rotation, and how it operates on a flat Earth. Now I'm using this particular model, the popular model, and that is a disk, and objects, sun objects, move around over the top of the disk, the flat Earth. I have a single point light source pointing down roughly over where the equator is. So now what I have with this model is we have the North Pole here, 45 latitude north, and the equator. So we're just using the northern hemisphere part of the disk, not the rest of it. So at 45 north, the mount is on a 45-degree wedge coming through there, polar aligned to Polaris. Now the idea is we're going to have this scope pointed up, looking east, up in the sky somewhere, and then as the sky rotates around, the equatorial mount will track the object moving around southeasterly direction, southerly direction, and so on until we get to a westerly. So we'll start off east and we'll finish west. But since I cannot rotate my entire rim around the model, the best thing to do is to actually rotate the model instead. So it will achieve the same result. So the model rotates around. Now look in the southeasterly direction, tracking in a southerly direction, southwesterly direction, and finally finishing off tracking in a westerly direction, or using one single axis of rotation. So we're going to see how we go. Okay, here we have coming around to solar noon on the model. As the sun's about to set, objects are going to be rising in the east, and the equatorial mount will be looking up there and tracking the object, and as we can already see, the equatorial mount has failed to track. In a southeasterly, southerly direction, should still be tracking in this direction, setting in the west, and finally the telescope points in the right direction 12 hours later. So the scope should still be looking in this direction, tracking objects in the sky, but it's not doing that. And here we go, start another 12-hour rotation, rising in the east, and again failing to keep track in that direction. So as we can see, that's a polar aligned equatorial mount on one single axis of rotation on this particular model simply doesn't work.